my beautiful friends, welcome back to another recap video. These were some of the most amazing times in the last several years for me. They were jam-packed, and frankly, I did lose track of some things like maintaining my health, maintaining my faith the way that I normally like to, but they were so fun, and the memories that I made, the people I got to meet and to love and to be loved by just changed my life forever. It was incredible. Before we really get going, I did cover a few more months in a previous video. That was March of 2023 through the end of 2023. So if you want to go get filled in on that, please go do that. That is a very recent video on my page. And there are recap videos for before that too, but the last ones that I filmed were back in 2023. So very long time ago. We are going to get started with January of 2024. So before I get too deep into anything, I left off the end of 2023 with me and my sister Macy going to Disney World. My parents were celebrating their 25th anniversary in the Maldives at that time, and my dad was doing really well in his job. He still is, but financially he was doing really well, and my mom felt bad for us, so she sent us to Disney World for 3 days while they were gone. It was also over New Year's. She felt bad not being with us for a holiday, so we spent some time in Disney World together, which was great because my parents don't like Disney World and my sister and I love it. We spent a lot of time in Magic Kingdom and Hollywood Studios. We saw all the shows, we did a bunch of rides. My sister has historically been afraid of roller coasters, but I got her in love with Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. And we just had a great time until the third day we were there. We were supposed to be there for 3 days, January 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and I got awful food poisoning. I'm not entirely sure what exactly it was. We went to that drive-in theater in Hollywood Studios, and I was feeling a little queasy after that, but we ended the day with hot dogs. My suspicion is that they gave me a meat hot dog. I'm vegan and I have been for several years, so that definitely would have messed with my stomach if that's what it was. But I was up all night in our hotel room just retching. It was so bad. So I didn't go out, neither did my sister, on that third day, which was very sad, and I regret it, but I think I just am lacking empathy for who I was in that moment because I was feeling awful. We were supposed to do Epcot that day, so hopefully I can go back to Epcot at some point. But we just laid in bed all day, and I napped and ate saltines, and we watched Saltburn. After that, we headed back to Cape Cod, where I was living at the time, and then by January 10th, I was flying into Amsterdam. So I mentioned in my last recap video that I'd gotten accepted to this audio production course. That was what was called the APC with YWAM Amsterdam. I had done a program with YWAM before. They have a DTS, the Discipleship Training School, and that's the first one that everybody does when they go into YWAM. There's a lot of discourse on YWAM. I just saw a TikTok last night actually about it being a cult. I personally have had amazing experiences with it. I have met some of my favorite people in the whole world in YWAM, and I understand that there is some spiritual abuse that happens in some places. I've been very lucky. So I was very excited to go back and do another school with them. It's a secondary school. My first course, my DTS, was in Montana in 2020, and then I went to a different one in Amsterdam. This is the only place that they had this course. But I'm in love with Europe. London is my favorite city in the world, but I just love Europe. And so I was living my best life. And the purpose for doing this was to kind of get myself out of that release mindset right after I put out Open Book in December. I wanted to take some time to separate myself from the grind of the music industry so I didn't get too focused on self-preservation and everything. And so I could go and just live in community and be influenced by other people, learn a lot about audio production and about my faith and how it ties into my pursuit of music. I was still very stressed about going. There's something about the unknown of it all that will stress you out. I was feeling kind of sick before I went, but I got there. They were easy on us for the first couple days. I was staying in this room that had like 14 bunk beds, so it was kind of like a hostel, but you know that everybody going there is going for these certain schools, you know, their character is going to be upstanding when they are subjecting themselves to living in this kind of space and doing this kind of a school. So I didn't have any worries or fears about the people I was going to be by, but I did get the room to myself for the first couple days because the rest of the girls that were filling up that room were part of a different school that started later. So that was great for me. My personal space matters a lot to me, and that was something I was really challenged with in the APC was not having my own personal space and finding those moments of solitude and comfort in places that didn't belong to me necessarily, but were kind of a communal space. But it was very lovely that I got the first couple days to relax and make it my own. So the setup of the APC it was a 3-month course. There were 6 students and I was the only girl, which was kind of fun. I try not to be a pick-me, but I kind of got to have not like other girl syndrome the whole time, and I was down for it. It was cool. But it's not like I was one of the boys because I was only wearing pink and white the whole 3 months. Basically, they packed our schedule. So we would be getting into the classroom at 9 a.m. every weekday, and then there were maybe 2 days a week when we would end at around 6, but then 3 days a week that we would end around 9 or 9:30. So it was very packed, and our lessons were split up into 3 categories. It was audio engineering, Pro Tools, and music theory. So we would do the kind of like mic setup and studio etiquette thing in audio engineering, and then learning how to use Pro Tools for Pro Tools, and then music theory. They split us up into 2 groups, and I put myself in the beginner category because I didn't want to overcomplicate things for myself. And I actually learned so much that way, getting to start in the basics. And I got so fired up about music theory. That was my favorite category, which makes sense as more of a songwriter than a producer. But I'm very thankful for all of the knowledge that I did learn. I'll tell you a little bit about the projects we did, but for the most part, I went into the APC looking for that rest, for that personal growth, and just for the knowledge of the audio production, not necessarily looking to be an audio engineer myself, although by the end of the school, I was very empowered in the things that I learned. I haven't used them, so I've lost the lessons that I learned. But yeah, my ultimate goal was not necessarily to become a pro engineer as much as it was to gain an understanding of the craft so that I could speak about it easier in my own recording sessions. So I definitely want to talk about the community aspect because that was one of the biggest blessings while I was there. There was a school that was happening at the same time as the APC. It was called the School of the Word and Spirit, which is a school I don't think I could ever do, so more power to all the people who were wrestling with that as they were going about that. But there were 2 ladies in that school, Louise and Megan, that had done a DTS with one of the guys in the APC, Jack. And so they all knew each other ahead of time, and they actually had a bad experience in their DTS and were coming back to give it another shot, which I respect so much. Those girls were so awesome because I went into this school anticipating not really having any girlfriends at all, and they were just the sweetest, awesome, cool ladies. They were just so awesome, so fun, so funny. There was a random day when I was walking back from getting breakfast on a weekend, and I ran into Megan, Jack, and this other guy in our school, Harry, and they were on their way to a botanical garden, and they were like, "You need to come with us." We just were passing each other in the city. So I was like, yeah, why not? I'll be spontaneous. And we all went out to this botanical garden, and we got pizza, and we got drinks. It was so cute. Things like that, just magical things happened all the time. Some other cool things about the community aspect were all of the schools would get together, and they would have like meetings about what was going on base. There would be different events that you could go to, different worship nights. So we really did get to connect with all sorts of people, not just the people in our immediate circle, which was good because our immediate circle had like 10 people in it, like total for our whole school, whereas a lot of the schools had like 30 people. We also had work duties. It kind of makes it seem like a commune, but I personally loved living that way for like 3 months because it really just changed my perspective on how to be a human. And my parents always say they liked me better after I came back because I just was more helpful and aware of other people's space and everything. So yeah, my work duty was preparing the guest bedrooms for whenever they would have guest speakers or just guests come through. I got to like wash all the bedding and remake it and make these little welcome cards and set out chocolates on their bed. I had so much fun. It was like my favorite thing. I got to color coordinate all of the bedding to the room colors, and it was just so fun. And it was an hour every day where I could just pop headphones on, listen to music, and be in my own little world, get some time to myself while I was doing something pretty robotic and routine. So that was awesome. And all the guys had to like mop. So I was really lucky in that. Something that was really special to me in that first month being in Amsterdam was our base had a coffee shop in it, or as they say in Amsterdam, a cafe. Coffee shops are for weed. It had a cafe in it, and it was so cool because it's all volunteers, so the only money you're having to pay is for like the supplies. So it was so cheap, like you weren't getting anything over $2, which was incredible. So I went there all the time, and it just tasted so good. They like were super knowledgeable about their coffee. I do always say the things that I learned most about in the APC were audio engineering, then God, and then coffee. It was a major thing. They were making pour overs all the time. And I'm more of a latte girl, but it actually did start to get me to appreciate pour overs. It was just so cool. And then I would always go into the Anchor, that's what it was called, at night once they turned all the lights off, and that kind of became my safe haven. They had a ton of cozy couches and everything, and I would sit in there alone and journal, and that was the place that kind of became my spot. Because you see it during the day just full, and then it's so special to get to turn on one lamp and be alone in there. So every Friday in the APC, we would have what they called a project day. So they would give us this list of parameters for a song we had to make, and we had 8 hours to do it. And our first project day was towards the end of January. Basically, we were learning stuff so simply, so they just said make a song with like 3 instruments. And everybody had been using the Beatles as a point of reference all the time. We were also learning about recording to tape, and so that was a major thing. They were talking about the Beatles a lot. And so we did a cover of Drive My Car, and I have a ton of footage from that day actually. And the project days just got cooler and cooler. I have a lot to tell you about that in the coming months, so that's very cool. For the first 3 weeks of the APC, we had a guest speaker, Toby Scott. And he is originally from Montana, around where YWAM Montana is, and that's kind of how he got the connection to the APC. But he was Bruce Springsteen's engineer, and so he taught us a lot, and he was just an absolute character. He was a wonderful dude, so fun just to listen to and watch interact with people. He's like so tried and true, and so he's kind of like that old, wise kind of guy. He kind of reminds me of the wizard dude in the Lego movie, and he loved the Beatles, so that was also kind of part of that. Towards the end of the month, all of us, a bunch of us that were in the APC in the SWS, the School of the Word and Spirit, took a trip to Antwerp. So that was me, Luis, Megan, Jack, Harry, Jad, and Land. So there was only one person in our APC bling that did not go with us. But it was just this whole big group. It was so fun because we'd known each other for 2 weeks, and you're just in such close proximity that you feel so much closer already. So we all took this trip, and Louise had actually considered moving to Antwerp before, so she really knew what she was doing and was kind of our tour guide. So we all stayed in this tiny little Airbnb together, and Megan and Louise made this breakfast buffet one day, and we went to this jazz bar at night and just listened to jazz. And Toby Scott was also there. He was taking his own trip that weekend, and so he showed up and hung out with us at the jazz bar. Another thing too about Amsterdam is that I was 20 when I was there. And so I've always been very careful about drinking. I've never really drank underage, aside from when my parents would offer me a cocktail or a glass of wine on special occasions. And so that was kind of the first time I was drinking, because obviously it's legal there. Drinks were cheaper, and I wasn't really in a position to be drinking super expensive cocktails or wine. And so I was kind of enjoying figuring out what my go-tos were on the cheaper end of things. And so it was so fun to get to go to a jazz bar for the first time, because that's something I had looked forward to all throughout my teenage years. So Amsterdam was just a really fun place to learn how to drink. And I still won't do more than 2 drinks in a night. I'm so careful about it because I'm kind of overly health conscious. But even so, it was just so much fun to get to learn how to drink there and go to jazz bars and do the whole thing. One more thing about Antwerp is that I had the best chocolate I've ever had in my life there. My friend Jad and I went into this little chocolate shop just to grab something really quick. I was wanting to grab some bars for my family, and they had this one vegan truffle, and I was like, I'm gonna try the one vegan truffle. And I stood there just ascending. It was so good, and I don't remember where it was. I can't recommend it to you, but it was just so good. Now to quick do my obligatory going through all the media and everything, I wrote 3 songs while I was there, and I love the songs I wrote in Amsterdam. Usually when I get into YWAM or just any space that is outside of my norm, I write really cool songs. And I was writing maybe 1 a week, excluding the songs I was writing for project days. So I was writing a lot. I wrote this song Rings and Things right when I got there, which was sort of about admiring the sense of style and composure that a lot of the people from Amsterdam had, and how I wanted to replicate that, and how I was learning by seeing other people and just sort of the way they lived their lives, the pieces that I had been missing in my life and how much they made me feel more like myself. I also wrote the song Albert Heijn. Albert Heijn is a department store that everybody would go to for snacks and just necessities. And my friend Jad challenged me to write a love song about Albert Heijn. And so I went into another room, took me an hour, and I wrote this love song that makes it seem like it's about a person, but it's actually about the grocery store. When Hades sounds is cold, you are my heat, you are And then I wrote this song Diary that people love. It has gotten me second place in a competition. My dad said it's his favorite song I've ever written. People love it. And it's basically about how I was struggling with being a very open and upfront person in the APC next to a bunch of guys who were less emotionally vulnerable, and struggling with that imbalance because I really wanted to know what was going on in their lives and they just wouldn't really share that so much.
What I wouldn't give to read your private thoughts, the highlights of your life and the damage that it's wrought. What I wouldn't give to see life through your eyes, but I'm a hypocrite 'cause I'd never compromise my diary.
So those are the songs I wrote in January. The music I was listening to, I got back into The Art of Letting You Go by Ewan J. Phillips, which I mentioned last year in the last recap video, but we had a project where we needed to analyze some of the themes in a song based on this book that we were reading for our curriculum. And that's the song I picked because I knew I could listen to it over and over and over again. One of my leaders also was saying he really wanted to do this kind of harmony thing with anybody who would be down to Please Don't Go Home Yet by Steven Sanchez. And so I was listening to that a bunch and realized how great of a song that is. And then I was just listening to a lot of Nick Wilson because for some reason in January, I always get into Nick Wilson again. He's just like the most heart-wrenching, pathetic love songs. I love it. And then Joshua Bassett too, who I can't listen to anymore. I blocked him on everything because my love for him was getting too parasocial. So at least I'm self-aware. And then for movies, I did mention I watched Saltburn. Also, before I went to Amsterdam, I watched No Hard Feelings. I went to Wonka in theaters and saw that with my friend Abigail. May December and Maestro. May December I thought was really, really good. And I was trying to watch some of those popular ones, so I watched Maestro as well. And then once I got to Amsterdam, of course, I was around a bunch of boys, so we were watching so much Nolan. But I actually hadn't seen all that much Nolan. I had just seen like Memento, Inception. And so we started with Tenet, which I did not enjoy. I did not get it. And I went in expecting it to be like Memento or Inception, and it kind of felt like he maybe bit off more than he could chew. It just was too confusing. Like, there wasn't like an aha moment, you know, where you're like, that's why it makes sense. It was just thoroughly confusing. To me, anyway. I can get into Nolan. He has some good stuff, and we will talk about that in February. I started to really take advantage of Amsterdam a lot more that month. I had this budget saved up that I had worked for ahead of time, and so I knew I had some spending money, but I didn't want to waste it all right away, and so I was being a lot more careful in January. And then once February came, I was like, oh, I'm in this place and I'm not losing money very fast. I think I should be good. So I started going on a lot of solo dates, and I've never had a problem doing that, thank God. I am very apt to do a lot of things on my own, and I really started to do that to the max when I was in Europe. So I went to a lot of places by myself, and it was very fun. I went to the Rijksmuseum, I went to the Van Gogh Museum, and I'm not normally an arts person, but those are just some of the most amazing pieces, so it still did move me. And then I loved trying all of the vegan restaurants and all the cafes. There are so many vegan options in Amsterdam, it's wild. So I went to Vegan Junk Food Bar, I went to Ann and Max, I went to Trevi's, and that was the first time I ever went to Margot's, which is, I think, my favorite cafe in the world, honestly. They make these incredible vegan pastries. They just are out of this world. And I would always get a red velvet latte there too. It was my favorite spot. It was 1.5 miles away from where I lived, and I would walk 1.5 miles there and back every time I went, because I just loved it so much. It was so good, and it kind of balanced out, you know, eating all those pastries. And it was just the most incredible walk too. First time I went there was actually with my friend Megan. We had a little date one day, which was so fun. We went to Droog, this coffee shop, or cafe rather, and Margot's, and went shopping for books and did the whole thing. It was so fun. She almost got her ears pierced. So that was great. She also was just a lovely human being. She would wake up early and go get pastries for everyone, including like vegan pastries I could eat. She was so awesome and so cool, and she and Jack would always buy everyone drinks. They were just so financially generous to everyone. We also celebrated Galentine's on February 13th with me, Megan, Luis, and Vero, who was one of the leaders of my school. We went to this wine bar. It was called Uker, and the night we were there, we found out it had been rated the best wine bar in Amsterdam that night. So that was very cool and fun. And then we went back and had some snacks and watched Little Women, which is my favorite movie. So that was so cute and fun, and really reminded me of how cool it was that there were so many girls that I could really rely on and love in that city when I expected there to just be a bunch of guys. I started to become friends with this girl Danielle, who I love still. She's so cool. She's also vegan, so we got to kind of bond over that. And yeah, she's just a very cool individual. We bonded over some experiences living in California, and she was helping me understand music theory for my class, which is cool. I also went to heijn, which is Europe's largest like flea market thing that they did once a month. And that was when I started getting into rings. Both of these are from Amsterdam. This one was from heijn, this one is from the 9 Streets. And I wear less rings than I used to because I bought some cheap ones and they kind of broke, but these are the ones that have held up. So that was really fun to go there and look for rings. It was really massive. I ended up staying way longer than everybody else that I went with. I also got very obsessed with this candy from Amsterdam. We called them piggies. They were kotka or koshka or something. I don't know how you say it in Dutch, but they were these vegan pigs and they're so good. They were so good. I ate so many of them, and they actually just started having them at Target. So they're gonna lose their specialness, but that's okay. They're still good. We also went to a bunch of open mics because at the end of the APC, we had this project where we needed to produce and mix, start to finish, a song for an artist from Amsterdam that we had to find ourselves, which was very cool and I think taught us a lot of that initiative. So we were going to all these open mics. We went to Bro 20 once, and then we always went to Park, which was this very cool bar. The guy that hosted that open mic, Lincoln, he was close with one of the leaders of our APC, so that's kind of how we got that connection. And that had a bunch of vegan food and good cocktails and everything. And we found our artist eventually at that open mic, so that was very cool. This is when the project day started to hype up a little bit, and they started to ask us to write our own songs, because that was like a minor focus in the APC was songwriting, which I was all on top of. That was my spot. And so one of the weeks we did this rap because I requested that I be with Bling that week. We would always switch partners so we could kind of see our dynamic. And he and I are very different people, but he was just so funny. He would always do like these random raps and stuff. And so we made this kind of rap thing about the APC called Pringles and Piggies because those were the snacks we would always eat.
Stefan runs home to Aaliyah, dressed in head to toe Adidas. Day is over, alter ego, call him Steve, he's a Minecraft streamer.
From that point on, they kind of started pairing us with the same people every week based on who were going to be our partners for that final project. So I was with Harry every week. That was also the week that they started asking us to write in a genre we were unfamiliar with, which was a really cool challenge for me because I was doing most of the songwriting. For better or for worse, I probably should have collaborated more than I did, but it was really cool to experiment with other genres. One week we tried to replicate like an Elvis situation, and we did a song called Rando's Bike. That was just a story about like, it was ridiculous, like falling into a canal. And then we had a week where we were collecting samples from around the city, and we did this song Machinery, and I don't know if that was necessarily in a different genre than we were used to. Maybe we tried and we failed because it was pretty true to me, but that was a really cool song too that had a lot of kind of cool sample technical elements in it.
So overload me, make me useless, sever every wire so you know I'll explode. Beat my circuitry so I'm free to be just a shiny thing, then maybe something more.
I loved those project days. They were always so much fun, and I would always buy whoever was my partner a latte or a cortado or something, and it was cozy and it was fun. All right, so for songs that I wrote that month, I wrote the song Thrift Shop in Toronto. I don't know how much I posted about that, but we're still keeping that one on the DL.
I don't have time, you're not my type, I'm not prepared, no end in sight.
I wrote the song Relieved, and that was also for a project where we needed to write or just create an art piece. There were people who painted and everything, but create an art piece surrounding an element of like the Jesus story that we didn't normally create from. So a lot of us had written spiritual songs before and done spiritual art pieces, but they were saying, write from either creation, humanity's fall, or redemption. And so I wrote about redemption because normally my songs are like sad. And it was a really cool experience for me because I wrote this song about hating evil. And I never realized, I'd always kind of spurned diss tracks, sort of, I guess, in a typical diss track form or just songs about hatred. And that actually was a song written out of hatred for evil. And it made me realize like, oh, there actually can be redeeming ways to write out of this emotion, which is very cool. I stayed up till like 3 a.m. that night working on it in the studio.
But we flirted like a dog and his leash. Oh, he fooled me once but flirted twice. I fell prey to his alibis. I'd throw him up, then come back for more. But I've gone and blown out all the lights. persistent fights. Good luck, old friend, chasing me to the door.
Then I wrote this song, The One Adjacent, which is one of my favorite sad love songs I've ever written. I didn't force myself to rhyme, and it just went so well. He's a decent boy, he's kind, and has these eyes that I would stare into if it wasn't weird, because we're not like that. Sure, we could settle down, there's something to the phrase, because I don't really love him, but at this point it would be worth trying. That's crazy. And so good. That's one of those I'm like so glad that I got to write.
Sure, we could settle down. There's something to that phrase, 'cause I don't really love him, but at this point it would be worth trying.
I wrote the song Wait that I'm also really proud of and still speaks to me a lot about how I was sort of neglecting my faith a lot while I was there, which was very antithetical to the reason I was supposed to be there, and how it was really cool that my faith and God was just always waiting for me whenever I would focus on other things, and how that's kind of unfair in my favor. And there's a line in that says, "You play with my hair and you tell me you miss me these days." And that just always shows me like the heart of God and in my faith, where it's like, there's not a guilt, there's not a pressure to have to go to it, but like my presence is missed in that, and I will feel the same way if I go back. So that's cool how sometimes in my own songs I can write a lyric I don't really realize, and then they'll speak to me later.
Keys on the table, bottle of wine, I'll drink half a glass, then turn out the lights. You play with my hair and you tell me you've missed me these days.
And then I wrote the song Reality Check for a project day, and that one we were going for funk, and so I was listening to this Spotify funk playlist, and that was when I discovered Stevie Wonder, and I heard Summer Soft for the first time, and it blew my ever-loving mind. The key changes and the tempo shifts and whatever, and so I wrote the song Reality Check that actually has the most insane picking progression and the most insane chord progression that switches keys, but I'm not a good enough guitarist to just go up a half step, so it was going like all over the place. And I'm so proud of that, and I don't know how it came out of me. And so I'm so excited to put it out, because I hardly consider it one of my own songs, because it was for this project day. But we tried to produce it that day for the project day, and we couldn't, because it was so difficult. Because it was all over the place, key-wise and tempo-wise and everything. So I'm excited to put that out one day.
Won't you lay your confusion to rest in the grave? Reality check, baby, baby, listen, just come home again. Walk the carpet dressed in suit and tie, proffer your concocted smile. Everybody screams your name, and the reason that you came is a trophy shiny golden sitting on your bedroom shelf.
I spontaneously went to this concert with Harry and Jack for Flight in Amsterdam, which is very fun, and Billy Martin was playing keys for that. I had never heard of them before, but then I got really into them afterwards because they were so good. Yeah, and so for music, I was listening to a lot of Flight. I loved I've Got a Girl, and then I was listening to Is There Still a Light On by Adam Melcher, because that was when he released that, and that guitar riff is just so good. And then I was listening to a ton of Leith Ross. That was always the music I would listen to while I was journaling. And then for movies, that was when we really got into Nolan. I told someone I had never seen any of the Nolan Batmans, and so they made it their mission for us to watch all of those. And so we watched Batman Begins, Dark Knight, and Dark Knight Rises. And Dark Knight is just a piece of art. It's so good. I'm so glad they made me watch that. And then I also watched Narnia, which was cool because I actually was feeling like I needed to revisit that story from that perspective after one of our like ministry nights. And so that was fun to be like, wow, I feel like I spiritually need to watch Narnia. And then of course, Little Women for the Galentines. March 2024 was like maybe the best month of my life. It was so good. And the whole time I was in Amsterdam, I had this horrible cough. There was something that was going on. I was just sick the whole time, but I don't even care because it just was so incredible. So on March 1st, I took a trip to London by myself. We were allowed to leave Amsterdam 3 times during the 3 months because they just wanted us to continue to focus on our studies and the people around us. But of course, you're in Europe, you want to travel. And so I went back to London. I've been before, but it just is my favorite city ever. So I left at 3:42 in the morning for like a 5 a.m. flight because I only had a weekend. And so I left so early on Saturday and I had to be back by Monday. and I wanted to maximize my time. So I left so early, and that was the only flight I took out of Amsterdam. I had taken buses for the other trips I took, but of course you can't take a bus from Amsterdam to London. And this was so cool because obviously I've traveled alone before and I've done, little outings by myself, but I'd never gone to a different country by myself like that, aside from the US to Amsterdam. And it was just very empowering. And of course I knew the city, but it was just really cool. So I got there and I took the train into the city after I landed at the airport. And then it was still early, nothing was open. And so I went and sat at a Blank Street Coffee for a couple hours and read my book. I was reading Pure Color, which was a recommendation that Megan gave me and I had bought at a bookstore when we were hanging out. And then I went and got Donut Time donuts. They have like a bunch of vegan donuts there and they're so good. They're so delectable and just desserty. And then I did a bunch of shopping because I had been around a bunch of boys and I just wanted to do that, and I was in my last month of the APC, and so I was like, I have all this money to blow, and I'm glad I did. In retrospect, I'm glad I didn't save it because that was a great way to spend it. So I went to Glossier, I went to Reformation, I went to Liberty. Liberty is one of my favorite stores ever. It's so beautiful in there. We named a dog after Liberty, and I love getting a scarf every time I'm there. So I got a little Liberty scarf, like one of those you can just put in your hair. And I was walking around all of London, so that was just so sweet and fun. I also got some good food. I went to Mildred's for brunch on Sunday, and that was all vegan and really good stuff. And then Honest Burger had my favorite burger I'd ever had in the world, and that was before I went vegan. And I took another trip to London when I was just vegetarian, and I actually broke my vegetarianism for that burger, but it wasn't quite as good as I remembered it, so I just got a vegan burger at Honest Burger, and I think they've kind of franchised, and it didn't impress me as much as it used to, but their fries and their lemonade are still so good. The reason that I really went there was so I could see some theater, because I love theater. And so I saw a matinee of Cabaret, and that was just so cool. Cabaret is in my top 15. I love that show, and I saw it 4 times before it closed in New York, twice in London and twice in New York. I didn't know anyone in the production the first time I saw it, but I think that was for the best. And I was blown away. I was shocked. And I think I believe it was March 2nd, was like one of my favorite days of my life because I got out of Cabaret, I was processing it, and I checked my phone, and my favorite singer-songwriter is Adam Melcher, and I DM'd him, hey, have an amazing show in Amsterdam, so sad I can't go because it's sold out. He was opening for Leve on her European tour, but I was like, have a great show, and he was like, how many tickets do you want? I'll put you on the guest list. So I was freaking out. That was my first guest list for my favorite artist, and I was gonna get to go that next week, and I had just seen a show, and I was about to see another show. I was elated. So that was when I went to Honest Burger, and then I went and saw The Picture of Dorian Gray with Sarah Snook. I have a thing where I try to see a bunch of actors from Succession in Broadway shows. My family and I love that TV show, and so I've actually seen a ton of them by now, but that was one of the earlier ones, and it was very cool to see her, and I met her at the stage door. Yeah, it was also very cool to stay in a hotel because I had been in such close quarters with people. It felt very weird. I had so much space to myself. It was so odd, but it was nice. That next day I kind of just walked around and sight saw, which I had done before obviously, but it was fun to do it again from adult eyes. It was so sweet. There was a moment I was sitting in a park while I was waiting to go back to the airport. There was this group of girls that passed me, and then she turns back around, comes over and said, excuse me, I just need to tell you you're so pretty. And I was like, this is my city. I love it here. So I am planning on moving to London by the time I'm 30. I'm 22. So I'm gonna get out there, but I just love it. There's something magical about it. I just feel like I belong there. Oh, I love it. That was an amazing trip. The other trip I took that month was kind of a buzzer beater, but I went to Paris by myself. And I also had been there before, but I went when I was like 14 with my family, and that was just weird. You don't go to Paris when you're 14 with your family because there's not stuff to do with a 14-year-old in Paris. We had a weird experience, and my dad was just working a lot that time, so I wanted to go back and have redemption. I also had discovered that my favorite musical is Moulin Rouge since I had gone to Paris that first time, and so I wanted to go to Montmartre and stay there and get to see the Moulin Rouge. I didn't go in, but see the outside and just enjoy kind of the space where that took place. So I planned that trip really haphazardly and very quickly. It was right towards the end of my APC experience, but yeah, I took a bus there. Something that was just a common thread through that whole trip was the song Why Don't You Want Me by, it's like James Smith, I think, and Eloise. And I had found that right before, and I listened to that on the entire 8-hour bus ride there. And then we got there around 6:30 in the morning, and there was not a lot to do in Paris at 6:30 in the morning. So I was just walking around trying to figure out the metro, listening to Why Don't You Want Me on repeat. Every time I listen to that song again, it just makes me think of Paris. But yeah, I took an 8-hour bus ride to Paris, which is an experience. Tried to sleep on it. I don't know that I slept that much, but that's okay. I was running on joy. So right when I got there, I went to this cafe, Land and Monkeys, that has a bunch of vegan stuff. And I sat there and read for a little bit. They had the tiniest shabby bathroom, like up a flight of stairs, that I tried to get changed in. It was very not great because my Airbnb wasn't ready yet. But I finally went to my Airbnb and dropped some stuff off, and it was so cute. It wasn't like, you know, the whole Paris skyline thing, but it was Parisian. It was cute. It was small. It was perfect for me. And then, yeah, I went back out and I just was kind of walking around and exploring and seeing where the day took me. I ended up at the Sacré-Cœur Basilica and decided to climb all the way to the top, and that was a beautiful view and kind of an experience that made me appreciate traveling alone because I could be so spontaneous. There was nobody to say, no, I'm not going to do 300 stairs, and they were exhausting, but it was awesome. And I was the only person that could say yes or no. So that was really lovely, and I walked through Montmartre. It is pretty touristy, but I was kind of okay with the kitschiness of it. I went to like a souvenir shop and bought a bunch of postcards that I now have in frames all over my room. I went to some vegan places. I had a hot matcha. I discovered I don't like hot matcha. Yeah, I walked around and saw the Eiffel Tower and l'Arc de Triomphe and everything. Walked around the Champs-Élysées. Yeah, it was so sweet. I went to a bunch of vegan places like, I'm gonna butcher these names, Faubourg de Mont, Le Potager de Charlotte, Le Potager de Charlotte. I don't know. I had like a 100-day French streak on Duolingo a couple years ago, and then that's all I've got. Oh, and then VG Patisserie. One of my really good friends from Amsterdam, Esther, had lived in Paris for several years, and so she gave me a bunch of recommendations. She told me to go there. She also told me to go to the Parc des Bouches-Chaumont, and that was a beautiful park. It was raining, so it was a little tricky, but they just have the most beautiful architecture in that park. It was gorgeous. It was like if Central Park was cooler. So yeah, that was a lovely trip as well, and very fun to redeem Paris for myself because I was able to be alone and just see the romance in it and appreciate the things around me, move slower, and not expect there to be stuff everywhere I turn, you know, but just to experience it. Yeah, and then as for Amsterdam, we did this project in March that was a week of trying to recreate a song exactly in all of its components. And they gave us a list of songs to choose from. I regret not choosing Movie by Tom Misch sometimes because it was between that and one other song, and I think that would have been good, and that's what Harry wanted to do. But we ended up doing Erase Me by Lizzie McAlpine, and that was crazy, and I am very glad that we did that. It was a toss-up. I wish we could have done both. The harmony, vocal comping, everything on that song was nuts, and it was so fun, but it was so involved and crazy where I would just listen to that song over and over and over and hear more harmonies I had to record, which was the Jacob Collier influence, of course. That was fun and a lot of work. And then that was the month that we started on our final project, and that was cool because it was a lot looser in our schedule, so we had a lot more time to determine when we wanted to wake up and go to bed, when we wanted to work, when we wanted to do other solo projects, things like that. And we ended up recording this song that we wrote with an artist. Her name was Kirana Diamantino, I believe, or maybe just Diamanto. But she is so talented, and we found her at that open mic at Park. She has this beautiful, like, jazzy, bluesy voice, and the music she releases is a lot more like hardcore house kind of stuff. But we did this jazzy song with her called Slow Down. And yeah, it was just a joy to work with her and get to use her voice for our final project and make that for her. And then I also just explored Amsterdam with some friends. I went to Vegan Temple Bar, Madre, Hearth. I loved. That was one of my favorite restaurants. I had this amazing rose gin cocktail. And I went to Meatless District. And then I had this one day that was so fun where I went on a little date with my friend Peps, and that was when we started to develop a super strong friendship. She's just so chic. She's from Paris. Well, she's not from Paris, she's from France, but she's awesome, and she just navigates emotions and grief with so much grace. And then I also hung out with my two friends named Esther on that same day, and that was the first time I tried this strawberry matcha that I had always passed on my way to Margot's. And I've never been a matcha person. I tried it, didn't like it, but it looks so good. And so we went and tried it. It was a fully vegan place, and it changed my life. I ordered 2 of them. It was so good. And so that's when I realized that strawberry matcha is the thing for me, and I haven't had one as good as that Tea Stories matcha since then. And they actually opened up a permanent location since I left, so lucky for you if you're in Amsterdam. Go enjoy it on my behalf. And then I had a bunch of little dates with other friends too, Danielle and Peps, and we went to St. Jean, which is another really great vegan bakery in Amsterdam, and Luke's Coffee. There was this cute little like home decor place where I got these awesome earrings, which you wouldn't think would be there, but I had seen them and I had to go back and get them because I was obsessed with them. And then we also, one of our like work duty things was over the weekend, we didn't have the people that would cook cook for us. We had like chefs that would come and cook dinner for us every night. And then we would just do like sandwiches and salads and stuff for lunch. But on the weekends, they weren't there. And so a different school would make dinner for everybody, rotating weekends. And so we had the Audio Pizza Co., the APC, and we made pizzas for everyone one night. And that was just really fun. And we goofed around, and Louise joined us, and it was just a good time. I only wrote one song that month, aside from the project stuff. And that was Well Short, which was about my friend Peps going through this relationship thing.
I'm the monkey in the middle, and I'm glad he's feeling better. So it's not my place to ask him what's been going through his head. There's a girl that I feel sad for as she holds it all together, 'cause she tries the best is coming, but if it's not him, then when?
And then I watched 2 movies. I watched Hail Caesar on a little girl's movie night. That was a weird movie. I don't really remember it. And then I went and saw Dune Part 2 in theaters with one of my leaders and his wife. And we saw that in Dolby, and it was amazing. It was so good. And then I actually finished 2 books that month. I read Imagine, A Vision for Christians in the Arts by Steve Turner, and that was part of our curriculum. And it was really cool because it didn't really land on a certain belief. It was kind of just wrestling with the idea of, what do we write about as Christians? How do we present our art? Do we only write about God? Do we swear? Do we write about everything? How do we talk about our faith as artists? And you really could just latch onto whatever he said that really resonated with you, because I don't think he even decided on his beliefs. And I really appreciated that because I was wrestling with some of those things at the time. And then I also finished Pure Color by Sheila Heti. I don't know. And I think that might have been more of a dense book than I was ready for, but it had lots of themes of grief that I think would really comfort someone going through that. And then for music that month, of course, Why Don't You Want Me? And I still love that song to death. I also got really into Annika Kilkenny. She is just a brilliant songwriter, insane. That was when I discovered Chapel Roan, and I think I was a little early on the bandwagon there, because that was March of 2024. So luckily, I kind of got to have my Chapel Roan phase before she took off. She was opening for Olivia Rodrigo, but that was before she, was playing golf ball and everything. I love the song I Miss July by Marie Dresselhuis. I don't know how you say her name, but that is a wonderful song, and I really admire her stuff too. She's a smaller artist and always on TikTok and making beautiful, beautiful stuff. And then I got really into Nep, who I also found on TikTok. The Mr. Carter song, I don't know, that went kind of viral around the time. Mr. Carter likes me. In Milktown. Milktown is a convenient meeting place to a married couple likes you. Oh, and then of course, a concert. I went to the Adam Melcher and Leve show, which was very lovely, and I got to talk to him about audio production and everything, so that was very cool. Okay guys, this is crazy, but I talked about January, February, and March 2024 for 40 minutes. And I don't know how much I'm gonna cut it down, but I have to go to work. We'll see how long this video ends up being after I edit it. I'll talk about the last little bits of Amsterdam probably in the next video, but I learned so much, and it was just such a blessing to be there. And I miss it every single day, and I miss the people. They're so hard to visit. Thank you for watching this. I'm gonna go head to work, but I'm excited to keep recording these for you to fill you in on everything that happened, and I've been dying to tell you about Amsterdam and London and Paris and Antwerp. Go check out all of the links for things I mention down in the description. Let me know what else you want to hear. If you have any questions about this, about the last video, about what I'm about to talk about, let me know. We can chat. And tell me what you were up to in those months. Okay, I need to run. Bye.